Okay, now we have a slight change to the programme in that Danny Rogers is not here to talk about his book, Campaigns That Shook the World. But potentially we've been upgraded, I think, because we've got Julia Hood, who's Chief Content Officer at PR Week, who's going to talk to us about 5 observations on marketing and PR agency. And I hope we don't have too many disagreements on the channel, but there you go. Over to you.
That's not the first slide. Let's see if we can get back. Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm sorry that Danny couldn't be here, and he is extremely sorry he couldn't be here. He was really looking forward to his session, and of course it was all about his great new book, which is just coming out now. I hope you'll have a chance to check it out. And I certainly didn't want to take on the task of explaining his vision, so I decided to take this session in another direction. I hope that's not disappointing to anyone here. Where I sit is as the Global Brand Director of PR Week. We are in London, US, and in Singapore, and hopefully growing to new markets. And I'm also the Chief Content Officer across the business media brands in the US. So I want to give you a snapshot and see, so you can see where I'm coming from when I'm talking about the marketing. My marketing observations are apropos of my bigger experience across other types of marketing brands and also other types of business media brands. This is a snapshot of all of our marketing specific brands, and I specifically work on medical marketing and media, direct marketing news, the Hub, which is for marketing technology, and PR Week. And Campaign is just launched in the US 1 year ago, so I'm involved in that as well. Brand Republic, you'll know, marketing, you'll know. So my perspective is informed to some extent by observing the marketing trends coming out of our clients in all of these different sectors. It's got a mind of its own. And then beyond marketing, I'm also the Chief Content Officer over SC Magazine, which is the leading brand for cybersecurity. So we all know, and the last 2 days have been extremely interesting and enlightening to me in terms of seeing just how far we are progressing the conversation about where the profession of PR is going in the marketing mix. So while many of the objectives of marketing are still the same, we're looking to hire, retain, that's supposed to be, you might see some typos, I just did this yesterday, so forgive me for the typos. Retain, that's meant to be win and grow businesses. But now, increasingly, as we've discussed several times, it's come up many times over the past few days, agencies want to target CMOs rather than the CCO, or I should say probably in addition to the CCO. Certainly the CCO is still an important part of the mix. But now trying to reach a very, very different mindset. I thought Colin Byrne said it beautifully yesterday when he said CMOs are not creatives. They are data and numbers people who outsource creative, which was, I think, a differentiation that isn't often talked about. So this refocus is obvious, shifting internal structures where PR is coming into the marketing organization. Obviously, there are bigger budgets in the marketing world, and marketing is perceived in any case, in many instances, as more tied more closely to business objectives of making money, the bottom line, rightly or wrongly. So it's tougher. It's really hard now. You have to demonstrate that you're not just, you have more than just traditional PR expertise. There's a much bigger competitive set. So we used to say, oh, how's Edelman doing versus Weber? But now, forget it. The whole space has changed and expanded out of all proportion. And even local clients, as many of you have said to me over the past couple of days, are thinking globally, if not even acting globally. So how do you put your footprint in that world? So I wanted to talk about 3 things that I think have caused seismic shifts in the way that a lot of organizations that I work with and see are approaching their marketing strategies. And there's a couple of things that have either occurred over a long period of time or sort of came quite suddenly. The Cannes Festival effect, the trust barometer effect, and investment in the agency marketing function. So first I want to talk about the trust barometer. Who knows the trust barometer? because I deliberately didn't say what agency it is, Edelman. Edelman has done the Trust Barometer for 15 years. I've been at PR Week for 15 years. I've watched it, and I've watched it adjacent to every other marketing effort that's gone on. And I would say that it is an extraordinary case study in making a deep investment and commitment into a piece of research that even in this event was cited by a speaker. I can't remember who it was, I'm afraid, but there was a speaker who raised it. I've rarely been to an event of communications professionals where someone didn't cite or refer to the Trust Barometer. But the fact is, its influence has actually gone beyond that. So where PR Week, for one, used to partner with agencies to do a lot of surveys that were about PR, and the market may have been slightly outside PR. For example, we used to do a CEO survey. It was a survey of corporate CEOs, but what we were asking them was, hey, what do you think about PR? Well, that sort of research only has a very limited scope and a limited level of interest, because what we were really doing was feeding back to ourselves the insight that would help maybe grow business with our partners. The Trust Barometer it was probably not the first, but it really dug into what is going on out there in the broader business community, that we want to get an insight and analysis that we can bring to our clients. We can arm our counselors with taking this to clients and applying it to all the different verticals in the organization. It was launched in response to the Battle in Seattle protests. That's when the light bulb went on. There's a movement out here. People don't trust organizations or institutions anymore. What does this mean? It costs 7 figures. And as Richard Edelman has said, it allows our industry to have comparable footing for consulting firms, with consulting firms, probably. So it's definitely not the last. There are lots of other research pieces now that extend far beyond. Every single agency of any size does research now, but I would argue that the Trust Barometer was the first one to really penetrate beyond our market, and now it's kind of led the way for others. So these are just 3 examples. There are many more. And the way that they did that was through aggressively pursuing media partnerships to disseminate it outside of the trade media, and by giving it all away. They gave it all away and sliced it and diced it, and in every single year when it comes out, they unspool the data over time regionally. All of their regional executives are empowered to give speeches and bring it to their markets, and it's really quite an exciting event every year. A lot of admiration for what they've done. So moving on to the other seismic shift is, on the other end of the spectrum, is the Cannes Festival of Creativity. We heard yesterday from the awards director, which was a great session. We know it was launched 7 years ago. I sat with several agency CEOs, some of whom were here yesterday, who said, Cannes, it's an awards thing. It's for the ad agencies. Maybe 8 years ago they were saying that. Nobody is saying that now. It's increasingly dominating the hearts and minds of the biggest agencies. It's come up quite a lot in these sessions today. Early adopters were Ketchum, Weber, and Fleischman Hillard, and I think they've seen the benefits of this, but it's one of those that's very tough to quantify, and it's expensive. But it is more than just an awards. It's a hub. It's a place to demonstrate your creative cred and to showcase top talent and to reward top talent as well. And we're nowhere near the saturation point for PR in this mix. In fact, I think we all feel when we go there, we'd all like to see more. It was so great to see ICCO have the House of PR this year and really feel like there's a beachhead for our industry. But there's so much further to go. And the additions of the Health Lions and the Innovations Lions, which kind of bookend the main Lions Festival, have really enhanced and given more dimensions to the experience. And I'm not here to sell Cannes. What I'm trying to convey to you is that this is a movement. This is bigger than just an awards. This is becoming a year-round planning process of how we're going to use this experience to extend our business, to grow our business, to retain talent, to win talent, and it can't be ignored. It's a force of nature. So you can find your way to Cannes in lots of ways. You can't really understand why it matters until you're there. That's the thing. And it's not so much about pushing out content and sending it out to the world as it is in creating and having an experience. And the experience to me is serendipity meets creativity, and the relationships you forge there are incredible. They persist far beyond the moment that you were there. At this point, just being there sends a message for PR, because it's still new. It really is. And we have a ways to go before the true PR work is rewarded in the way it should be. So those were big things that taught us something new. That taught us we have a different place in the world, in the discussion, in the conversations, whether you're in the boardrooms of the Creative Hub or the Facebook cabana, what have you. This is a very pragmatic thing, but it's really true. It used to be the worst job in the whole industry was doing PR for the PR firm or marketing for the PR firm. You had no budget. I knew a guy, he was called Cost Center. That's what they called him in the office, Cost Center. That's what he was. He didn't have clients. His client was the agency, and he did not get respect for that function. So either it was this terrible, terrible job, or it was left to a senior exec who had client work and they would give you a call, but really it didn't have the respect or function. And more enlightened firms were further ahead, obviously, but even now, there are some firms that need to pick up their game, even some of the largest firms. But the kind of quality talent that is coming into these roles is really, really grown, including Stephanie Marchese of Fleishman Hillard, who's the CMO of Fleishman Hillard, who conceived their approach to Cannes last year, 2 years ago, which was really, really powerful and effective, and actually walked away with a lion this year for work she did, not for Fleishman, but for a client. So that's the sort of person and level of this function that we really want to see across the board. So I just have 5 observations. I'm probably going to go through these pretty quickly. I just realized the slides are down here. Things that I see that they sort of persist in my observations of the things that more agencies need to be mindful of as they're approaching their marketing strategy. So the first one is, I would just revert back to the balls discussion. Be brave, be bold, establish a stretch destination and take us with you. That's one of the things that Edelman did with the Trust Barometer. They said, you know what, we're known for brand accounts and Marcom accounts, and we want to get a stronger beachhead in corporate. And they took us there with them. They set out with a handful of countries and grew and grew and grew to the point that they are. Another brave partner is MSL Group. We did an activation with them at Cannes 2 years ago, where they boldly invited the creative director from McCann, who had conceived the winningest campaign in Cannes history, Dumb Ways to Die, which I think we saw yesterday, to join a panel discussion. This is not just from a competitor within the holding company, a competitor from a completely different holding company from McCann, a bold discussion, a bold move. Many people would say that was foolish to give a platform to a competitive agency, but what it did was say, we are the convener of the conversation. We are bringing the people together. We're going to give you the best experience that you can have, and that was extremely bold as well. This is a big one for me. Hiring is not marketing, and marketing is not hiring. So we marketing, part of the marketing objective is to recruit and retain great talent. But when I see a lot of the new hires coming out of the industry, I often feel like the person who's been interviewing them has been writing the press release in their head while they're sitting across from them in the interview, because they're either thinking about the marketing asset that they have in wherever this individual has come from usually outside our core industry. So it's not about agency X getting somebody from agency Y. It's about somebody coming from outside the industry. And they take them in, they're hired, they put them on a pedestal, and use them to define something about the culture and character of where the agency is going. But one person does not define that for you. And you need to tout your great hires. They're obviously very important, but it's not a marketing strategy to say, I'm going to go get a chief creative officer, and then and then our job is done. See, we've got a chief creative officer, and that's our marketing tool, and we will trot this person out in front of clients, and we will reference them, and they will be visible. But the real change, and I think my friends at Hill and Knowlton are going to pick up on this theme next, so I don't want to get too far down this road, but this is, when you're thinking about hiring the very best talent, making selections on the basis of their marketing impact is a poor way to go. Number 3, the CEO must be visibly engaged in the message externally and internally. We've said it over and over in the last 2 days. The PR industry is in a moment of extraordinary change. I was just talking to our colleagues from Portugal before and their integrated firm, talking about where PR will sit in the future. I've never heard this level of discussion, this candor in any group. I think it's absolutely fascinating and a real credit to the power of ICCO. So it's all the more important that the CEO or business leader, whoever that may be, is very, very visible in this time of change. So Fred Cook comes to mind again. Fred has always been his biggest brand booster. Back when he first came in as CEO, they had a rebranding exercise. If you ever saw Fred in the mid-2000s, he had an orange lozenge GH on his lapel every single time. I'm sure it was on his pajamas as well, because he never seemed to take it off. He was the embodiment of the brand. And the brand at that time, when he came in, very challenged, much smaller than it is now, in a very different state of development. But he took it on himself to be out there and be the brand ambassador. It was extraordinary to see the evolution of Golan to this point, and he's still doing it. He's still taking those courageous steps to talk about, let me tell you all about how we're changing the structure of the organization. That's not something that is generally put out by the CEO at that level. I can tell you that it resonates hugely with the client side. And I speak a lot to marketers as well as corporate communicators. They want to know who's in charge. What are your values? What do you believe? Where do you think it's going? And if your CEO isn't out there, or if you're not out there, you got to find the right places to go that are comfortable and sometimes uncomfortable. This is very tactical, but boy, make it easy. Make it easy for us. I loved our session from Candace yesterday on the visual storytelling. It was just fantastic. Make it easy. If you don't have a Twitter handle, guess what? I'm not gonna tweet about your speech. Not gonna happen. So get the Twitter handles, put faces on them. Don't make your brand stand there. Use exciting images, be interesting, use authentic language. We get very caught up in a self-conscious way in this industry of using jargon, of talking big, talking bold, but people respond more to authenticity. Would you read it, share it, use it? If not, don't do it. This is tactical, you all know this, but we apply all these standards much more readily to our clients than we do to ourselves. I would urge everyone to hew closer to some of the marketing tactics and understand them and deploy them as they are appropriate. So we do a ton of content in this industry. I mean, we are prolific, but the rigor of content marketing in its truest form is not being adopted nearly fast enough. So a white paper may go out, what we would call a white paper, a study, what have you, even a video, something that people feel is worthwhile enough to put in their data, download, tell you who they are, where they are, what they do, and then use that material. So what happens to those nice lists of individuals who did that? Too many times in PR firms, I see this over and over, because we do this. We deploy materials for all kinds of different kinds of companies. And I've had the conversation more times than I can tell you with the PR agency client. We don't really care about the leads. wow, you don't care. Who cared enough to download, to give you their data, which is one of the most valuable assets that we have today, is your personal data, to put it in there and say, yes, I want this that much, that I'm going to give that to you. Even if you're, I think that the perception is that if you're doing a lead generation activity, that then you're going to hand over this list to a telemarketer who's going to be smiling and dialing for you. That need not be the perception. That need not be the activity that follows. But there should be something. It's called, and it's a wonderful expression in direct marketing, as I know from Direct Marketing News, it's called a call to action. Find a call to action. Get people to take action and then learn from it. If it's data analysis and you leave it at that, you see more healthcare clients downloaded this than technology, and yet I'm trying to grow my technology. So what am I doing wrong? That's sort of closing the loop on this transmission of this content is not happening in any meaningful way with the types of activities that we're undertaking anyway. And I don't think anyone in the trade media is doing more than we are in terms of trying to drive that really measurable, data-driven activity. What are the net new connections you're pursuing? Who don't you know? And how do you get to them? Those are the kinds of conversations we want to be having. And go multi-channel. We're seeing a lot of moves now to, I only want to do events. Events are fantastic. No, there's nothing better than being face-to-face with people like you and people that you aspire to get to know and work with. But it needs to be complemented across all the channels. And no marketer, no serious marketer will undertake an event without having a proper multi-channel strategy behind it. So those are my 5 points. I'm sure most of it is not news to anybody here. At PR Week and indeed at Haymarket, we have a really good perspective on the audiences that you're trying to reach and what's working best for them. So I'm happy to be available for any kind of discussions. If anybody wants to kind of just brainstorm some ideas for their own organization of how they would like to reach their audience a bit better. And I'm happy to answer a question if anybody has one, or chat later, because I'll be around. Okay.